Hey, what's up, guys? You're tuned in to the Getting Uncomfortable podcast. I am your host, Eric Uresk, and I'm here with my co-host, OJ Orlando Jimenez. And welcome and thanks for the support, guys. It's been really nice. We've gotten great feedback on the episodes so far, and we're just looking to grow this thing and keep kind of coming at you guys and with good content and things that you find interesting. Anything that you guys want to hear about, guests you'd like to have on, topics that you'd like covered. When you like, share, and subscribe, you can leave comments and let us know what you want to hear from us in the future. So today we thought we'd try something a little bit different and do a little bit more of a solo cast where I just kind of kick around ideas that have been going on in my mind and that I'd like to share with you, and things that I've found helpful and that other people have found helpful when I have these type of conversations with them. And so today, I often get asked the question, how do I deal with the fears and anxieties that come up to me in life? And it's a fairly common question. And the path that I take to get there, it'll make a lot more sense when I kind of break it down into sort of bite-sized bits. So, for a long time, I would be in fear and anxiety and have no idea that I was in fear and anxiety, right? So that was like a common thing for me. I'd be going through my life, particularly like early in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and obviously probably prior to that, when I was like pretty heavy in my addiction, running purely based on fear and anxiety, and that was what was fueling my addiction. And then, at 23, when I got sober, I'm not using drugs and alcohol anymore, and my life's a mess. I'm not getting arrested anymore. My relationships are trash. I can't even have relationships with people. All my friendships are one-sided, and I'm miserable, and I feel alone all the time. And like getting close to people was absolutely terrifying. Like actually having like real deep friendships or relationships with a woman was absolutely terrifying to like have anything of substance. And so I had no idea that this was going on. I just thought this is the way life was, and I was mostly just angry, right? Because I couldn't put a name on what I was feeling, and anger was easy, right? Anger was always kind of my go-to for when I needed to feel like I was in control, right? So I couldn't kind of break down, okay, that I'm feeling lonely, or that where that loneliness is coming from, that I'm actually afraid of intimacy. Like I couldn't break any of that stuff down. I didn't know that these were the things that was going on, loneliness, fear of intimacy, stuff like that. So anger was just suitable, because anger, my whole life I learned, if you get angry and violent, like you can take control of a situation. And at 14, 15, 16, sometimes that works pretty good. It seemed to work all right for my dad when I was a little kid, and then as I got older, that stopped being less and less acceptable. You start going to jail for stuff like that. If anger and violence, as long as that was how I was coping with problems, that was frequently ended me up in legal situations, at the worst, and and hurting people and just living a way that I didn't want to live. And it was really rough, man. It was really rough to live that way, to not have any tools, to live a life like without having tools. It's like asking somebody what the color blue is, but you don't know what the color blue is. Like, there's no way I can explain that to you, right? So like OJ, I could, you could ask me what's that like, right? And but you don't know what it's like, or if you don't know what it's like, there's no way I can explain it to you.
Explain it,
yeah. There's no way I can explain that to you. And so, like for me, I had to start like getting down to like root causes and conditions. And so, the first thing I had to be aware of is like whatever I'm doing right now is not working. So like that's a great jumping off place, I think, for everybody. It's like, if I don't know where to get started, and you'll hear me talk about this on other podcasts that I've done, and this is something that I use all the time. How is that working for you, right? So are you happy? Am I happy with the results that I'm getting from however I'm operating right now, or the current set of circumstances that I'm living my life in? Am I happy with these? Am I happy with the results that I'm getting? Am I happy with my relationships? Am I happy with the fruit of my labor from living the way that I'm living? And if the answer is no, okay, I may not know what to do, but I got to do something different, right? I got to do something different. And that can be really challenging. That can be really challenging, and it's like it's a really hard thing to do on your own, right? I had to reach out for help, and fortunately for me, throughout most of my life, I was heavily involved in 12-step programs, right? And but even there, you can seek out the people that are kind of just getting by, and you can seek out the people that are going deep in the work, right? And you get a mixed bag like you get everywhere. There's some people that are just happy to not be drinking, and life is cool. And then you get the people that they stop drinking, they stop doing drugs, and their life gets worse. And I was one of those people. And so I sought out the people that were talking about that. Like, hey, my life got worse when I stopped drinking and doing drugs, because that was my coping mechanism. Like drinking and drugs actually weren't a problem. Those were a solution for me, right? Without drinking and drugs, there's no way I would have made it through high school like without blowing my brains out. I'm 100%. I could not handle life on life's terms. Like, that was just not happening for me. I needed things to get me through, right? It wasn't going to be the love of my parents, because they didn't have any to give. It wasn't going to be the love of my family, because they didn't have anybody to give. It wasn't going to be from the dudes around the corner, because they were just teaching me what they knew. So I wasn't going to get it anywhere. I needed substances. And so now I'm sober, and I'm miserable. My life's falling apart, and I'm actively seeking out mentors, because I know there's got to be more. I know there's got to be more. I see some people living happy, and they're few and far in between, right? But I'm seeing these people, and I'm like, man, that guy seems genuinely happy. I didn't know a lot, but I knew when somebody was bullshitting, right? And I could feel the authenticity coming off people, and I'm like, this guy seems genuinely happy with his life. I'm gonna ask him, what he did, how he got there, and so I would take on these mentors, and started being primarily in 12-step programs, these guys that were really going deep into the work. And so at 7 years, I'm 7 years sober. I'm living in San Diego at the time. I'd been here about a year, and I'm dying inside, right? I'm lonely. I'm living in a gym, this dirty, horrible gym upstairs, and I'm not satisfied with any of my friendships. A girlfriend's out of the question, because I just can't have, I have women friends that I hang out with, but that's it, man. No intimacy in my life at all, not with my family, not with my friends, not with anybody. And I'm like, fuck, man, this is, and so you start thinking about, like, suicide becomes a very real option when everything that you think was the problem, you're not doing that anymore. And life is still really hard and challenging, It became like a very legit, because it just didn't know what else to do, right? What else do I do, right? I've tried not drinking and doing drugs. That's what everybody said was my problem. I stopped doing that. I'm not committing crimes anymore. I'm not going to jail anymore. Look at me. I'm like traveling. I'm chasing my dream out here in San Diego. I'm alone. All my family is far, far away. And yeah, man, and I cannot find any happiness. I cannot find anything good in what I'm doing. I have a really bad attitude. I have a victim mentality. Poor me. All I wanted was for somebody to come open up their checkbook and realize, like, oh wow, this guy's chasing his dream. Let me help him out, Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe that stuff happens somewhere, but I don't see it happening a lot. And I know there's a lot of young fighters out there, like, hoping somebody's gonna come and just finance their dream. And man, I just don't see it happening, man. Unless you're some blue chip, NCAA national champ, it's not likely going to happen. And even if you are, it's still probably not going to happen like that. It might afford you some opportunities, but nobody is going to bet on you till you bet on yourself and start investing in yourself a little bit. But so anyway, that's where I'm at, miserable, right? And I don't know, I don't even understand what I'm feeling. I feel bad. And so this guy Richie, who was a godsend, came, and he really took me deep into some self-exploration and through the 12 steps, but also just, in his own working knowledge on how to gain access to a spiritual relationship and how to develop that. And one of the tools that he had me do was start listening to my own self-talk, And he said, man, you got to listen really hard. And it might take some practice, because it's difficult. But, in your meditation, get still, right? Create that stillness and listen to the self-talk that's going on. And it didn't happen right away. He was right, you know. And I sat and I've been meditating for a long time at that point. And I wasn't coming up with any clear answers, but I started to get more still. And then I started to do these things, these resentment inventories, where I started to, you know, inventory the resentments that I had towards people, and I started to look at how I'm telling myself that this affects me, right? And, you know, in this inventory, the way that they do it, they break it down into the 7 different areas of self, right? How is this affecting my self-esteem, right? How I see myself in the situation. How is this affecting my pride, right? How I want others to see me in a situation. How is this affecting my ambition, what I want, right? My security, what I think that I need to be okay, right? That's a big one. What do I think that I need to be okay, right? A lot of times what I think I need to be okay is I really don't need those things at all, right? These are old stories that I have in my head, and they can also often keep me captive, right? If I stick with those stories, it can often keep me captive and you know, stuck as a victim of my own story for a long time. Personal relations, right? What do I think this relationship should look like, right? You know, my boss needs to treat me a certain way. Coworkers need to, you know, students need to look at me a certain way. Sex relations, how does my gender play into this? What would a real man do in this situation according to my story? And then we look at pocketbook. Is this affecting me financially at all? What do I feel like I'm losing in this situation, or that's being taken from me, right? So in like answering those and like breaking down those little 7, like I can very easily start to tell the story that I'm telling myself in these different areas, right? So now I have clearly put down in front of me, like, oh, okay, like I see myself a certain way, right? Maybe I see myself as, you know, the best coach that this athlete could have, and the athlete's not acting in accordance with that belief, and that creates, well, there's something off in the story. Something's not congruent there. So I want to feel this certain way about myself, and I'm charging this athlete with making me feel that way, right? So I've assigned this athlete the role. Your job is to make me feel like the best coach in the world, right? And I'm just using that as an example, right? It's my wife's job to make me feel like the most important person in the world. I mean, maybe sometimes it's nice to feel like that, but she can't do that all the time, you know? She's got a life to live. She's got hope. She's got dreams. You know, she said it so brilliantly on the podcast. You know, she doesn't want a person to be her purpose, and yeah, I can't be anybody's purpose. You know, people might be part of my purpose. You know, and helping people is my purpose. But if any one person becomes my purpose, that's what codependency is, and that's a whole nother you know, dark rabbit hole that we can get down another time. But
Right.
so I start to kind of break these things down, and I have them in front of me, and now comes the fun part. Now I get to see, where have I been selfish, right? Where have I been self-seeking? Where have I been dishonest and acted out of fear, right? So once I break down these 7 areas of self, I go into the part that I have control over, right? My part, okay? I don't have always control over the stories that I tell myself, right? They just come. I don't have control over how you see me or how anybody sees me. I really don't even have control over how people treat me in the moment, right? I literally have control over my reactions and what I do moving forward, right? So so I start taking a look. Where have I been self-seeking? Like, what were my selfish actions, right? Where was I selfish in thought? What were my selfish attitudes? What delusions was I buying into, right? So like a lot of times dishonesty is not necessarily lying, where I'm telling you a lie, like I stole money from you, or I left out facts. Dishonesty and delusion can be the idea. I buy into ideas that I need people to treat me a certain way so that I can feel okay. Or my value is contingent on the way other people treat me, right? So that's a story that I can tell myself, but that's a delusion. That's a lie. My value has nothing to do with the way other people treat me or see me. My value has to be intrinsic, you know. And that's something that I've learned. You know, that's a hard lesson to learn in coaching. Sometimes, you know, when money gets involved, right? You want to make money, right? So we do this because we love it, but you do want to make money, right? It's hard to live in California and San Diego without money. So I want to work with this athlete, right? But I want to work with the athlete for the wrong reasons. Maybe I don't even like the athlete's attitude, right? But I do like how much the athlete gets paid, and I love the fact of getting 10% of that, right? And adding that to my monthly income. But maybe my values aren't in line with that athlete, or that athlete's not in line with my values. Maybe, they like to be catered to a little bit too much, or they like to set their own schedule. They like to tell the coach how to coach them. And that's fine if that's what they want, but that's not for me, right? And so I've caught myself stepping outside of my own values to coach athletes in a way that I don't believe to be in their best interest, but to keep them happy, and why? I was afraid to set boundaries, right? And being afraid to set boundaries is a selfish action. If I don't set a boundary, it's for selfish reasons. It's not for you. If I don't set a boundary with you, it has nothing to do with you. It's that I want you to like me, or I want you to treat me a certain way. I don't want to upset you, right? And if I do set this boundary, you might not like the boundary and you might leave, and then I'll feel abandoned, right? Or left, or that I'm not good enough, right? And so I'm like doing this whole kind of self-sabotaging deal, and so that's one of the ways that I'm able to sort of, I used to have to put it on paper, and if something's real serious, I'll put that stuff on paper and diagram it out, just as I explained. But I've been practicing it for a long time, and I can kind of do that stuff in my head now, So, I've said this on a bunch of recent podcasts, but I'll say it again. There's an Eckhart Tolle quote, and I think it's so brilliant, and it's really what guides me like these days more than anything. It's, be at least as interested in your reaction to things as you are in the things that you're reacting to, right? So like, lots of things happen on a daily basis. Maybe my wife upsets me, right, with something. She's not acting the way I think she should, and I start to get a reaction to that. I immediately, and that's what I need to pay attention to, right? Because there's literally nothing I can do. Like, okay, tell my wife, like, you should be in a better mood, right? That's not going to work. You should be in a better mood so I can feel more secure that I'm doing everything right. I'm being a good husband. Like, first of all, I have no idea if her bad mood has anything to do with me, right? And it's pretty selfish to assume that it does. Second of all, like, to expect anybody to be in a perfect mood all the time is unfair, right? She has every right to feel the way she feels and process it the way she wants to process it, right? But my initial reaction is I want to control that. I want you to smile so that I feel secure, so I don't feel like I have to fix anything. And so that's really what's going on, right? So I could say her attitude sucks, or I could pay attention to my reaction, right? And what my reaction is I'm afraid that I'm doing something wrong that I need to fix, and that if I don't fix it, eventually I'll be abandoned, right? So a lot of my fears, anxieties, insecurities, they all kind of boil back to like root causes. A lot of them are about abandonment, emotional abandonment in particular, right? So that if I don't keep people happy on an even, at least on an even keel, eventually they'll get upset and they'll take their love away from me and they'll leave me. Because, that was my experience as a kid was, if my dad was in a bad mood, everybody was, no one was safe, and it was terrifying, right? And if he was in a good mood, well, then things were at least somewhat stable and less scary. And so what I learned was to, if I want to keep people in my favor and loving me, then I have to cater to that, I have to keep them happy. I have to keep them, from being displeased in any way. And I would struggle with that for a long time, particularly with people that I felt held power over me. So like if my the head coach that I work for now, sometimes he's hard to read, and he comes in and he's, kind of just in his world, and I'll think that it has something that I'm not doing a good job, and that's why he's not acknowledging me when he walks in the room, and I have to do something to fix this, so there's still that like little kid, like, look at me, and when that goes unchecked, I can get resentful after a while, like, he's not acknowledging me, right? And I need that that pat on the back, and that good boy, and I need to be patted like a dog. But the fact is, the guy's got a million athletes to take care of. He's a fireman. He's got his own life, all those things. And then I work alongside of him, and he doesn't always have time to check in with me or give me, my dose of instant gratification that I feel good. He doesn't always have time for that, and it's not always about me, But I mean, that's an easy way that I can let fear create a resentment, right? It has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with my reaction to him. Right. Now, that's not to say sometimes people's behavior is unacceptable. Like if somebody's stealing from me, if somebody's treating me in a way, if I don't feel like somebody's reciprocating in a relationship, or a relationship is healthy, safe, or conducive, like I'm more than free to set boundaries. Like it's not like all my emotional reactions are always wrong all the time. They're not always wrong all the time. Sometimes they're worth trusting. I think the key thing here is, for me, is that I'm always examining, right? I'm always examining. I'm always at least questioning myself. It's not that I walk around in doubt about myself, but I know that my initial reactions can often be off, right? They can often be, I know that they're often based on these old selfish patterns, these old fearful patterns about abandonment and what have you. And it can easily lead me astray. It can easily lead me down a path of resentment, So it's like, for me, and because I did get a lot of questions about this, like, how do I do this? Like, meditation, I think, is a great place to start for anybody. I think, if you answered, if you said you don't like, the trajectory of where your life's going or what you're doing is not working for you, I would strongly suggest adding meditation into the mix. Start with 5 minutes, start simple, slowly build up to 10, 15, 20 minutes. I find to be when I get 20 consistently, I'm doing a lot better all the time. Some days I rush, and some days life gets in the way, but I try to do 20 at least once a day. And because I would offer you this, like, if I can't sit with myself for 3 to 5 minutes alone with my thoughts, right? Why would anybody else want to sit with me for 3 to 5 minutes, right? If I can't sit alone by myself with my thoughts for 3 to 5 minutes, what does that tell me about myself, right? Is there a hostile environment inside that I just, I can't be alone with in those thoughts? I think that's always an interesting question to ask people. And usually their facial reaction right away will be uncomfortable. Some of them will have an aha moment. Some people will reject that notion because they personalize it and it rings true to them. And I think it's interesting. I think, like, the ability to sit still with oneself, right, says a lot about what's going on in your internal condition.
Do you find that when you are able to sit still and meditate, that you're able to come from gratitude often?
Yes, when I'm in, and it's not going to come right away, right? So here's the problem: is meditation. There's no instant gratification, right? It is something that has to be practiced, right? And so for me, being like a junkie, I like everything quick. I like it quick, and I need that pat on the back, and I need to feel good. Meditation doesn't do any of that right away. What I start to notice is, after continual practice of sitting still with my thoughts, right, as I get better at it, I'm able to see my thoughts come and go. I do my best not to judge my thoughts, right? Like, I shouldn't be having that thought, right? Or I start fighting the thoughts that I'm having. Like, I shouldn't be having that. I shouldn't be having that. I let the thought come and go. After I practice this for a while, what happens is I'm less reactive, right? So I'm less reacting to the outside stimulus of the world and much more just kind of centered in my own space. And then when I'm centered in my own space, gratitude is possible, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm in a reactive state and this guy cut me off, he's an asshole, my boss doesn't treat me right, this person's not acknowledging how hard I'm working, my wife doesn't pay enough attention to me, or she's, nothing makes her happy, or what, I'm reacting to everything. When I get into that reactive state, first of all, I'm nowhere near still because everything's affecting me, right? I find it very challenging to find gratitude when I'm in that place. Yeah, it's difficult. So the stillness is and my awareness to my reactions has to come first. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that can, like, fake gratitude, You know,
Right.
if I'm not grateful, I'm not grateful. Gratitude for me is a byproduct of all the other work that I do. In my experience, you know, I do find like writing things that I'm grateful for helpful to like build momentum in and out of a day. You know, I think it's helpful for that stuff. But like trying to run on like gratitude and writing, if I'm not grateful, I'm not going to be grateful just because I wrote a list. For me, I got to look inside of why I'm not grateful, right? And it's really just I have I can have a bad attitude, and part of that for me is like, you know, if you buy into the 12-step recovery model, right? Whatever your addiction is, right? They talk about a spiritual malady, okay? So a spiritual, like, you're unwell spiritually. And that's what that is for me. When I have that bad attitude, that bad outlook, that bad perspective, right? You can use all these words, they're interchangeable. That has to be treated in here, right? And when I treat that internal condition inside, then gratitude is a byproduct of that, right? Then the gratitude comes, and it's like, whoa, now now I'm grateful that I'm you know, I'm grateful to sit up and have coffee with my wife in the morning. I'm grateful, you know, I'm grateful when it's cloudy out because I get a break from the sun. I'm grateful when it's sunny out because I enjoy the sunshine. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be grateful for whatever the fuck is in front of me.
Yeah.
It's not important. It becomes really, really easy to just be in tune with the small things in life, you know, not waiting for the next big thing. And that's, for me, you know, since, you know, I coach high-level fighters, I've been starting all these projects, I'm writing a book and, you know, working on this podcast and doing this stuff, and I'm chasing this dream. What happens is I start thinking about the big picture, but in the wrong way. And it's like, when I get here, then this is going to be awesome. Once this podcast takes off, right, and starts making me money, then this is going to be awesome. And once these fighters start winning championships and making me money, then it's going to be awesome. And what happens is I miss the fucking ride in between and the awesome part and the journey. And that's where all the good stuff is. It's not in the events itself, man. The events itself, the winning, the losing, the highs and the lows, that shit comes and goes like that, you know? But being able to enjoy the small moments in between, like, and the small bits of peace in between, for me, that's fucking everything. Like, that's living a peaceful life. That's happiness, right? Happiness is like right here, I'm sitting out, you know, in this beautiful backyard, you know, having a nice conversation, talking, like, I'm like this, I really couldn't be more happy right now, you know? And this is not a spectacular event, right? I don't have, you know, anything huge on the horizon right now, but I'm fully happy with where I'm at, with the people that I'm at. I'm grateful for the people that I'm with right now, that, like, I get to share this experience with. And yeah, man, like, okay, now if I can get to that place, right, on a regular, and, you know, kind of cruise there for like that, I'm good there, man. You know, in the present, you know, as you say, coming from a place of nothing and just seeing what happens.
So it sounds like that's what you're talking about when you're developing that relationship with your thoughts, yourself, and your body, all in all, like right now, like,
Yeah.
it's where you're at.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so as far as, like, developing that relationship with my body, you know, the inner talk is usually the first thing that for me that I became aware of. And then upon, like, meeting my wife is real in tune with her body, and she's much more emotionally in tune than I am. Her whole thing is slow, mindful movement, you know? So when she moves, she's really into, like, every little step, every second of the movement of her body. She's trying to tap in and be present to that. And so I started doing more movement in the body. And not that you have to, like, move your body or do any kind of exercise to do this, but it just started helping me slow things down a little bit. People use yoga for that. Yoga is a fantastic tool for that on the physical end. But the more I started researching, like, trauma, like deep-seated childhood trauma, what I started to understand was, like, this is, like, stuff that gets stored in the body, right? So it's like an event that gets stored in the body. And if it's not proper, and it's an event that I maybe didn't have the tools to deal with at 5, 6, 7 years old, or however old I was, and however I understood it then is what got internally trapped in here, up until present day if I haven't dealt with it. So, oftentimes I could be, I was sitting around with trauma that was old, man, like 30 something years old. And yeah, it was, I would start experiencing these like weird anxietal sensations, these weird fearful sensations in my body. And I could feel them. I often feel in my stomach and my chest. And what I started to do was lay down. And I've actually done some of this in hypnosis as well. A few different people that have done this in different variations of their method. But to get still and feel where I feel that sensation. Okay, I feel a sensation, and I start asking myself, like, what is this sensation trying to communicate with me? And sometimes I have to listen like deeply for a little while and really just breathe in and allow it to be there. That's the biggest thing, is I have to allow these things to be there. The minute I start fighting the way this stuff feels, I can't fight something and like be present to it at the same time, right? So once that resistance comes in, like, oh, I shouldn't feel this, So like, if you've ever been abused or anything like that, and the moment I start thinking about the abuse, I push it down, right? I resist it. I don't want to feel that. Not now. My friends are here. I can't get choked up. I don't even want to fucking deal with that, right? So I'm resisting that. I'm resisting that that's inside of me, and I can shove that down where I think it's never going to see the light of day, and it'll see the light of day, and you'll crack one day. What happens is you just fucking crack. And I just found as I started peeling the onion, these things that I was holding on to weren't acceptable anymore, because they were owning me, and they were taking away from my life. I couldn't be a good husband like that. I couldn't be a good coach or a good friend or a good mentor, any of those things, a good son, any of that stuff. I had to really start to kind of heal some of this stuff and get present to it. And so I'll sit and eventually whatever storyline that was like trapped, whatever trauma was trapped, it comes to the surface. And the thing is, I got to sit with the event when it comes. I got to sit with the feeling when it comes. The emotion, that's the hard part. Sitting with the feeling, that sickness to my stomach, that feeling of unsafety, that feeling of shame and guilt, right? When shame and guilt kind of boils up in your stomach, that's the shit I want to push down so far, right? Because I was raised on shame and guilt, right? You're like classic Irish Catholic New York household, like, heavy alcoholism. Don't let the neighbors know about anything. Everything that happens in this house stays in this house. Meanwhile, every kid on every house in the block is getting the shit kicked out of them by their parents, and just no one talks about it, though. It's fine. So those are the people that raised me, right? That's what they were raised in, and don't tell nobody nothing, right? And so, yeah, man, like, it was like, so last night, I'll get this, and this is really embarrassing, but last night, I'm watching the movie The Karate Kid with my wife, right? Because they just put this new series, Cobra Kai, on Netflix. So they have the Karate Kid inspired my life in a lot of ways, right? I saw when I was fucking maybe 3 when that movie came out, right? Young, 3 or 4. So, my house I lived in an abusive household. It was fucking chaos. I was scared all the time. So I saw Daniel scared all the time, but then he learned karate and started fucking everybody up. He got the girl at the end, and then in the subsequent movies, like, he kept getting, bigger and badder and happily ever after, right? So the story I literally learned at 3 years old was you have to get strong if you want people to love you, because if you're weak, no one's gonna love you. Right? Because I would listen to early morning abuse sessions in my house when I was, a little kid, and I didn't have the strength to get up and do anything and go fight my father, So, and my mother didn't have the strength, so I'm like, oh, she's weak. That's why he does that to her, And it wasn't even physical abuse; it was just verbal abuse, And then I would sit there and wait and hope he's not going to come for me next, And so. But all I wanted to do was be strong enough to not be afraid, right? And so I just set out. I couldn't afford karate lessons, so I literally got a picture book of Taekwondo moves, and I would practice in the basement. And I would beat up my brothers, with Taekwondo moves that I learned in a book, and then I would just go out into the neighborhood and start fights. And I just realized I was strong and athletic, even though I was little, and really, really small. And just fighting. By the time I was in By the time I was in 5th grade, I had been in 50 street fights, and I would keep meticulous track of them. I would keep meticulous track of all these street fights because it was like a currency to me. This was proof that I can beat all these people up, and then people did treat me better. So what I noticed was when I beat people up, people treated me a lot better. And it wasn't love, but to me, I didn't know the difference. You know what I mean? It's like hugs from older guys after you beat somebody up on a park, on a park. I mean, that was better than what I was getting at home, right? Far better than what I was getting at home. So, at that age, do you know the difference, right? So last night I'm watching this movie and I start getting like emotional, like during the movie, and my wife like picks up on it, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's like this movie is literally how I laid out like my whole life," because I was so scared that this was the only guidance that I had. There was no males in my life telling me do this or do that, so I was like, yeah, I wasn't even sure that I was supposed to be a fighter. You know what I mean? Like I far more prefer at this point in my life, like being creative and doing stuff like this than I do anything to do with fighting. And not that I don't love it and have a passion for it, but yeah, man, it's almost like that, whatever, like that stuff like shaped me in a way that I wasn't sure that it was a response. So, me seeking out all that violence and it just got worse, like I started really hurting people pretty badly. And as I got a bit older, and yeah, I mean, that could have easily gone the wrong way. That could have easily gone in a bad direction. So, it's like, man, if somebody would have been there, to just guide me along a little bit, like maybe that would have come out different. And I did. I got like real emotional last night over that. And, it's a movie I've seen 100 times. But I think I'm in the process of, I think because I'm in the midst of writing the book that I'm writing, the memoirs that I'm writing, and there, a lot of the memoir is based on how I sort of shaped my life was based on these ideas, but I would have never been able to figure any of this stuff out, had I not started gaining these awarenesses, you know what I mean? Like that movie wouldn't have started making me emotional had I not started to like develop this relationship with my body, develop this relationship with my emotions, my thoughts, all of these tools that I've had to go out and get. And so I don't do any of this because I'm a good guy. You know what I mean? I do this because I fucking have to, right? I do all this work because I have to, because the alternative for me is to suffer so badly emotionally that, yeah, I'll just want to check out. You know what I mean? Like that's what happens when I don't work on myself, when I don't work spiritually, when I don't work emotionally, is I come to a place where I cannot handle the way that I feel and I want to check out. Yeah. So there's really not an alternative for me. It's not a choice, it's I mean, yeah, these are the options. That's not a choice, right? There's no choice in that.
Yeah. So listening to what your body's telling you and experiencing your experience is actually, from what I'm hearing, is being uncomfortable with being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, man. I mean, and that's really what this podcast is all about, is being uncomfortable. And it's not being uncomfortable to be a tough guy. It's the triggers are the path, right? Whatever triggers me that's where I'm not free. That's where I got to go next, right? I believe that's why I have the friends that I do now, I believe that's why I have the wife that I do, right? Like we both really force each other to get so uncomfortable all the time. Sometimes I'm like, fuck, man, are we ever just going to cruise and coast? But that's not our way. You know what I mean? I just like, I don't know. The more free I get, the more I just keep wanting to get more free and keep peeling the onion. There's no way to go backwards now.
Right. It's not like you're stacking more and more plates. Your plate's just getting bigger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the more free I get, the more reach I have. And it just feels the natural way to go is to grow, grow emotionally. I grow in the reach or grasp that I can have on other people and the influence that I may have on other people, how I may serve other people, and it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yep. Yeah, it plays a great role. You talking about identifying those anxieties, fears, and the state of resistance for yourself allows you to be able to do that for others.
Yes.
Whether you're coaching them, whether your relationship, family, friend, in that capacity, that's complete outward.
Right, and that's a big thing that, you know, a big part of what I do with the athletes that I work with is I know what a fearful reaction is, right? And when I see somebody that's afraid in the gym, and so
we all get there.
Yeah, and we all get there, right? Everybody's afraid of something, and so maybe somebody's not listening to me while I'm calling out calls in the corner, right? So, you know, I'm giving a specific call from the corner and they're not responding. The moment that happens, I know that that fighter is not in the present moment. Most likely that and that they don't trust, right? And probably a combination of the two, right? Or they're afraid to trust. They're afraid that if they do what I'm asking them to do and they do it wrong, something bad's going to happen because they did it wrong, right? And so often I'll pull them aside. I say, hey, did you hear me out there? They say, yeah, I heard you, but I just couldn't do it, right? I couldn't do it. That's always an interesting thing to me, and I believe them, and I believe for them that was true. I couldn't do it. Well, yeah, if you're in that much fear and that lack of presence, of course you couldn't do it. I know that.
Right.
Now, would you like to be able to listen to me when you're in the cage? Yes? Okay. Are you willing to trust me on how to get to do that? Okay. So now we ask, what were you afraid of? Right? Now I gotta ask the athlete, what were you actually afraid of? Were you afraid of making a mistake? Were you afraid of looking bad? Were you afraid of the penalty of making the mistake? Talk to me. Let me know what you're afraid of. And now we got a dialogue going on, right? Now me and the athlete have a dialogue going on. And the reason I know this is because I've been there. You know, I've been in their shoes, you know, hundreds of times over, right? So it's like, okay, let's figure out what you're afraid of. And is that a story? Is that a story that you're telling yourself? Is this truth or fact, right? That if you do what I'm asking you to do, like it might not work out. Well, that may be true, right? I might ask you to do something and it might not work out, right? That's very possible, right? But what I need you to trust in is that my ultimate goal for you is growth, not winning in sparring, right? Let's win in the fight. And in order to get you to win in the fight, I need you to grow here. And sometimes to grow here means to lose here. It means to get your ass kicked here and have to deal with adversity here, right? Over and over again here. Then when we get there, right, you've been trained to deal with adversity. You've been trained to listen to a particular call from your coach even though you're scared, right? Because most of us are scared when we get in there to some degree or another, right? Yeah. Sometimes it goes down to fucking childhood shit, man. Sometimes people had abusive fathers that yelled, you know, and when they hear yelling from the outside, even though it's supportive yelling, they shut down, right? And so that's something that we got to talk about. Okay, so the old story is that yelling means that there's a lack of safety, right? So, but here, we're in a gym, there's lots of voices, so we have to be loud, right? I can't whisper it, okay? In the arena, it's going to be loud, I'm going to have to yell, right? So we got to go back and visit that old trauma, and that's something a lot of young men and women are not willing to do. And some are. Some are willing to go to any lengths necessary. And those are the athletes that I'm most interested in working with. Because it's one thing to create. We want to fucking win fights, dude, 100%. But I don't want you to win fights and be a miserable human being. Right? Like, there's no point in going and winning a belt and not enjoying it. That's tragic to me. I think there's nothing more tragic than getting to the height of something and not enjoying any of it once that initial rush is over, because who you are as a person, you know, you're afraid of parts of yourself.
Yeah, I can remember that. Even early, young as an athlete and like a wrestler, you just wanted to get the match over with.
Right.
And there's no enjoyment.
Yeah.
Even if your hand was raised, let's say overtime 2-1, and you're dead. But you were just so fearful of losing.
Yeah.
And looking bad that you just missed the whole experience of experiencing that match.
I've had this experience, and I know a bunch of guys, and I'll leave names out, but guys, you'd be shocked, right? Sitting in the locker room, wishing that the lights would come off, right? Or that they would fall and injure themselves on the way to the cage so that they wouldn't have to go out there and fight because they were fucking terrified, right? Fucking terrified. I remember sitting there wishing something bad would happen to me, so that I'd get injured on my way to the cage, so that, so that I wouldn't have to go out there, and just this nervousness that I would feeling would be over with,
Right.
Yeah,
It's real for.
Yeah, that's real for a
in
lot of
that-
people.
that-
And why? Because I got my identity on the line, right? I'm going to love or hate myself dependent on how well this goes or how badly this goes. If I win, I'm going to love myself for a short time. If I lose, I'm going to hate myself until I win again.
And you had written some about that last week, didn't you? About fighters.
Yeah.
Looking for that win to validate.
Yeah.
Their own work.
Yeah, so I wrote something to the effect of, if every time you step out to compete, you have to carry the weight of whether you're going to love or hate yourself, depending on the outcome, maybe it's time to start working on your insides outside of camp, right? So I get guys, they'll hit me up like before a competition or something like that. Jiu-jitsu guys do this all the time. Coach, I'm fucking freaking out, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and I'll listen and I'll ask them the story, and I'll say, hey man, why don't you work on this stuff before you're driving to the competition, right? Not that I, mind the phone call, but wouldn't, you freak out every time you compete. And there's nothing wrong with being nervous about competing or getting, a little edgy about it. But your value is on the line every fucking time you compete. How about we do some work on that? And that's for a jiu-jitsu match.
Yeah.
Fighting is just a different level, man. It's just a different level. So, yeah, I would encourage like young fighters, and I get messages about this stuff all the time. Start diving deep into that stuff. The story I tell myself about my value is going to affect my performance, right? If I think or I have people around me that just love me because I'm a winner, they're going to leave when you're a loser, right? If that's what I'm building my relationships around, right? If that's my only value, that's what I'm going to build my relationships around, right? That shit will crumble if that's what I've built them around, right? Or it might just be a story in my head and I'm the only one that that leaves myself, right? I might abandon myself, right? That happens all the time. Guys abandon themselves. They lost. They're not worth loving themselves. Fuck, dude. That's a heavy weight to carry with you when you compete. That's a heavy, heavy weight to carry with you when you compete. And, fighting, it's a broken man's sport, largely, right? There's some, it's not a rule, but a lot of us get into this for lack of options, right? And so, yeah, if you come from a place where there's lack of options, oftentimes there's some other stuff going on. And I think that stuff needs to be addressed. Look, you can be a winner and not do any self-work at all, right? Jon Jones has proven that, he's done some pretty bad things in life, doesn't seem to learn from his lessons, and that's cool. And he's a champion. Is he enjoying life? I don't know. I wouldn't want his life. If I'm having to constantly drive around looking for cocaine, strippers, and stuff like that, I'm probably not super happy on the inside. Maybe not. Maybe I'm totally wrong, right? For me personally, when I was living that lifestyle, I was not happy on the inside. That's why I needed these outside things. So you can be an amazing fighter, gifted, talented, and win like that. I don't know that you can be happy like that. And if I'm going to win, I want to be happy while I'm winning. I want to be happy while I'm doing anything. I want to be peaceful while I'm doing anything. I want to enjoy the process with the people around me. I've had some of my best moments as a coach were after losses where I knew this motherfucker gave it his all. I knew he gave it his all. I knew he couldn't have done any more. And he worked on some things mentally that would have broken him in the past, and he got through that, and he still fucking lost, and I still could not have been more proud after a loss, right? That says a lot, I love winning, right? But I like seeing people grow, and I don't know. I choose to use this fighting thing. I choose to go more the martial arts path, of developing your whole self, not just your fighting self, but your whole self, because fighting is a short window. And no matter who you are watching this, one day your career will be over. Whatever it is that you're doing, right? Your athletic pursuits will be over. You won't even be able to do them at the old man level anymore. They'll be done. They'll be gone. And then you got to find a reason to love yourself, right?
Outside of fighting.
Outside of fighting. The crowd don't care anymore. The next young hot thing is in their eyes anymore. You're not getting free drinks at the bar anymore. You know, your story is old, it's done, and no one cares. And so how do you get through life then? Right? How do you get through life when you don't have those things anymore? So it's a pity to wait till you're done fighting to start working on that stuff, in my opinion. I mean, better late than never, right? But, man, to just, like, why not enjoy the road, right? Why not enjoy the process? You know, Alan Watts has this amazing talk, and he's a Taoist philosopher, and he's got a lot of videos on YouTube, and he's a frequent tool of mine to go listen to his talks. And he doesn't even like the term journey, right? Because journey applies that there's an end point, right? He likes to look at all this stuff like a dance. Like when you're dancing, the point of not dancing is not to get to the end of the dance, right? It's to enjoy the midst of the dance. When your favorite song comes on, you don't wait for that. You're not like, oh, I can't wait till the song's over, right? Let's hurry up and get my favorite song over with. No, you want to sit there and enjoy the song. You want to be in the song, in the music, right? So to treat this whole thing like music as opposed to a journey, really one of the most profound things to me, you know?
Good point.
And so, like, if you can enjoy the song now, you'll just keep enjoying it. You don't have to stop. There's no end point. There's no place to go. There's no place to get to. And yeah, I think that's the goal. That's what I seek. And, you know, I can get out of that really easy, you know, like even just with these creative outlets that, you know, these projects that you and I are working on. I'm like, when we get here. But it's like, no, man. Like I'm missing all of it when I do that. And I do it all the time, right? I'm doing it all the time. I'm excited about the stuff. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's
you
true.
know. And
it's true even in this, right?
Yeah.
We're so focused on, like, we want the end product.
Yeah.
So we can share that. But there's a process that we get to enjoy.
I got to do this part.
Yeah.
The fun part, you know what I mean, is actually create. None of this shit's scripted. Just go out here, wing it, and see what the fuck comes out. Yeah. And hopefully it's good and people like it, but I'm enjoying making it. Right? And if I make some mistakes and there's some background noise that comes in, hey, listen, we literally put this together with no planning whatsoever. We just knew we wanted to create a podcast, and we didn't want to wait for the perfect moment because the perfect moment wasn't going to be here for a while. So we got the equipment happened to be on hand, so we started using the equipment. We don't have an office. We're filming outside. It's not perfect, but I'm making this podcast happen in a way that I think is going to be a beautiful journey, and it's a great story to tell. You know, you can start when things aren't perfect, and waiting for things to be perfect to start is foolish. And so I think we'll end on that note.
Good point.
So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. This is the first solo cast I've done. We're going to do more of these in the future. So that is this week's episode. We will see you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in.